Welcome to Ashes to Love podcast, hosted by Marta Miner, with guests who have walked through fire and emerged stronger than ever. Let their stories light up your way.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ashes to Love podcast. And we have actually, Marta has a great treat for us. She's going to introduce us to her friend, Dr. Kim. So without further ado, Marta, she's like jumping in her seat, excited to tell us about Dr. Kim. So go for it.
Yes, good morning, Ushi. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I am so excited today because this is my personal friend, but also somebody who I admire and who's such an expert in her field that I just can't wait for you guys to get to know her. So today on the podcast, we have Dr. Kim Feinstein, and she is a dedicated clinical psychologist with over 20 years of specialization in weight loss, weight management, and eating disorders, with a deep understanding of the psychological factors that influence eating habits and lifestyle choices. Dr. Kim educates, guides, and inspires individuals to achieve sustainable, is a keyword, weight loss and prevent rebound weight gain through mastering the psychology of licensed in clinical psychology. Dr. Kim has developed a holistic approach that encompasses not only the physical aspects of weight management, but also, probably the most important, the emotional and psychological challenges that are involved. So welcome, Dr. Kim. We're so excited to have you here and so excited to learn more about this sustainable weight loss.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, and I just love you, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Ushi. So I'm excited for today.
Yes.
Yeah. And I
so
was
many
like,
questions.
yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. I was telling you earlier that I was stalking you in social media because I just have so many questions to ask
Oh,
you.
please. I welcome them.
Yeah.
Yes. Weight loss, it's like the biggest thing for a lot of women. And I think a lot of women struggle
Yeah.
with weight loss, with issues around food, with always being on some kind of a yo dieting. So we're so excited to just get deep with you, and you can maybe teach us, because each of us, I'm sure Ushi as well as me, have some issues around food or gaining weight. And I spoke with you because we're personal friends, like we speak about that. And you said that it's actually possible to have a permanent weight loss, which I was like, I didn't think that's a thing. I've been on so many diets in my life, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. And you said it's a little bit different because it's psychology is involved in it. And I think, as a lot of things in our lives, we get used to that, okay, the weight loss may be something that I'm always going to struggle with. Since I remember, I've always had that. Since a child, I was obese. I'm always going to struggle. And tell me what you educated me on recently when we talked.
Sure, there's so much. And I want to start off with really telling you again and telling everybody who's listening that it's possible, because so many of us have failed at weight loss and weight management so many times that we virtually believe it's impossible to make peace with food, to have sustainable, lasting, permanent weight loss. And I'm here to excite you, to motivate you, to guide and inspire so that you really can start to believe that if you know how and if you know why, you can change. So much of the diet culture in America focuses on the what to eat and how much to exercise or how much to eat, but they really don't address the psychological underpinnings or reasons as to what's fueling it in the first place. So if you're always focused up here on what to eat and how much to exercise, yeah, that'll work as long as you're following whatever plan you are. But the minute you stop the plan, then we know what happens, right? All the weight rebound comes up, and then you're struggling, and then the shame, because here you go again, right? You're throwing out your small clothes and you're back into the quote unquote fat clothes in the closet. And so many people struggle with, do I even keep the small clothes in my closet anymore? Do I keep the large clothes in my closet? Because we're constantly yo-yo dieting. And yes, step one is it's absolutely possible. And step two is we definitely want to consider the what and the how much. But if we dive deep, like you said, and get to the source and the root of the why, that's where sustainable change happens.
Mm.
So,
So
go
what
ahead.
I was like, what's the root? I want to get right
I
to
was
it.
going to ask the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
Because just a little context is that I think this is true for me and also so many of the women that I work with. They will be brilliant in every area of their life. In fact, maybe sought after in every area of their life, but this seems to be like the Achilles heel or alone crying, or even the thing, if I say this is what you need for visibility, the first thing they'll say is, okay, I'll do that when I lose the 10 pounds, or I'll do that when. So it's quite literally in the way of people's dreams. So I wonder, that's what I wanted to know when you're saying root, what is underneath, even like the one who feels like she's got control over her mind or her emotion, not even control, but just awareness, self-awareness.
Mhm.
It's still ensnaring, it's still hooking us. So what's that hook? And then
Yeah.
let's
So
bottle it up and sell.
and get rid of it forever, and so that we
Yeah.
never have to do it again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a great question, and it's the $1 million question. Why am
Mhm.
I struggling with weight loss? Why am I struggling to keep the weight off once I've been successful? Why do I even have this unhealthy relationship with food in the first place? And while I'd love to give you one answer that applies to everyone so
I
that
know.
I could package it up at the $1 million, right? Question
Yeah.
and answer,
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can help you find that why, because
Mhm.
that why is so specific for every person. So, you know, some people's weight struggles started from 0 to 5,
Mm.
and they have had this ongoing unhealthy relationship with food since then. Some people started in high school when they started maybe to go through puberty. Some people in college when it started with the freshman 15. Some people
Mhm.
started in after pregnancy and couldn't lose the baby weight. And then some people all the way through menopause where they never had to worry about food. So first, I always like to encourage people like, where did it start? At what
Mhm.
age did it really start? And then once we identify the age at which it started, let's take a look at what was going on.
Mhm.
What were the environmental factors? What were the relational factors? What were the societal factors, the socioeconomic factors? Was there trauma? Were there messages that you received? Some people start from 0 to 5 when they're learning with their parents, like you have to clean your plate. There are starving children in some
Yeah.
country, depending upon your generation, right? And some
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
food is love, and that if you say no to food, you're hurting
Mhm.
someone's feelings and resisting how they're trying to show love. Some people have had traumatic experiences, like serious trauma, right? With
Yeah.
sexual abuse, physical abuse, and they've turned to food to learn to self-soothe because they couldn't have a voice or they didn't have a friend or family member to reach out to support. So they've learned to self-soothe with food. Some people have had horrible experiences in high school and sexual experiences. And I've had my own personal struggle with food and my relationship to it dating back to when I'm 5. I had horrible food allergies that my parents became very restrictive in the house with food because of fear of that. And then they started
Mhm.
to control me with food. And so then my little
Mhm.
rebellious person was like, aha, I'll show you. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
developed an unhealthy relationship with them. But then as I matured, I had different instances surrounding food. I had a traumatic experience happen to me. I had negative comments made about my body that really shaped how I felt about myself as a woman and as a developing woman. It was around puberty. And again, I could talk about this many different reasons, but truly everybody's why is so different. And that's why our diet culture, I think, has failed us because they don't even talk about what's fueling it. What are your attitudes and beliefs that actually engender these behaviors or feelings? And then what happens is once you start a diet and then you lose the weight, you feel so good temporarily that
Mhm.
you start to say, oh my God, I feel so great. I wish I could sustain it. And then because you never address the why underneath, eventually it creeps back. And so you could be the most amazing CEO, C-suite. You could be the most amazing person in your company, in your business, in your family. But until we truly address the why and how to heal it and make peace with food, you will continuously yo and struggle.
Yeah, and it's the worst part is that whenever you do lose the weight, you get so much affirmation from other people that you lost the weight, you look
So
so
good. Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, everything is like you're on the high. And then when you do gain, you feel such shame over that. And that
Yes.
shame, talk a little bit about the shame that women, just people in general, feel when they gain it
Oh,
back and that
yes.
cycle.
Shame is something that I think even us women who are so successful in our fields and our careers and our families struggle with the most because we're so aware of it and we're
Yeah.
so perfectionistic and we love to achieve and succeed. I'll start out by defining it, right? By definition, guilt and shame are completely different. Guilt is that I've done something wrong in terms of a behavior, like I feel guilty if I do something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong.
Mm,
What's
Mm,
wrong with me?
mhm,
Why
mm,
am I so deficient, deficit, inadequate, unlovable, unworthy in this area, but in every other area, I seem to be able to measure up to my expectations, others' expectations. And like you said, Marta, shame is really one of the roots, and it develops almost secondary to all the failures we've had with weight loss before.
mhm,
We could have shame in other areas that we've developed as a result to a parental relationship, a romantic relationship, something in the workforce. Shame is not only associated with food, but it's definitely one of the roots, if not a major root that causes us to self-sabotage with food over and over again. And so we have to heal that shame. And Ushi and I, we were talking a little bit before how it's not your fault, right? It's
yeah.
not your fault. You haven't been successful. You haven't healed your shame and you haven't healed the root. So you're probably the best dieter because you know how to be compliant. You know how to sign up
Yeah.
and follow. You know how to be successful with numbers and measurements and how to do whatever diet you're following. The problem is we don't sustain those lifestyle changes. We just do them temporarily. And then our shame overtakes us in certain moments in our life and we revert back. So
mm.
that's really, I think, foundational is to heal our shame. And that's part of the psychology of lasting weight loss. Like, how do we really get to the roots and heal and make peace with ourselves, our bodies, and food?
Oh, I love that. The psychology of lasting weight loss. It's so well
Mhm,
named. I remember when you said, "Where did it start?" I'm shocked at the memory that came up because I remember myself, I'm probably 6 or 7, and I went to school and I was super sore. And it was because I had gotten on an exercise bike that was at my mom's house or my parents' house. I say mom because my dad wasn't on the exercise bike. Let's be honest, for my mom. My dad's like, I'm gonna eat what I want. But
Uh-huh.
it's like a very female thing in my house. And I just remember having, as a 6-year-old, who has this drive? I am gonna get on this bike and I am gonna get in so much shape this week.
mhm.
6-year-old, like
Yeah.
what I would like,
Mhm.
where is that coming from? And then I was super sore and my teacher was like watching me and said, is she not well? Is she getting whatever? Is she getting a cold? And I was like, no, I just rode my mom's exercise bike for 2 hours yesterday, which is, can you imagine a 6-year-old doing that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I actually probably don't know the source fracture story of it, except for that, as you're saying, in the Indian culture, it is very, you're so in touch with how there's so much poverty in your country. So it's like in your face. If you don't eat that, there's some starving kids and there's legit starving kids outside your house when you go visit your
Mhm.
grandparent. And so it's in your face about don't waste and the shame around waste. So now just this simple 2 minutes with you, or now 5 minutes with you, I'm understanding like, oh, wait, like it did start very early for me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so then now that I know that, what you're saying is that let me backpedal because my next orientation is great. I want to go fix it.
Mhm.
And I think that partly I feel I don't want to repeat the same mistakes as my parents who are both diabetic and my
Mm.
grandparents as well. So I am acutely aware that some of my weight loss has to do with lifestyle and being around for my kids and the quality of life. And so then I put it in the category of, oh, that's okay to beat yourself up about weight loss. Literally, that's what I do. And then there's the other category that does what you were saying, which is crap, I have to be on stage. Crap, I don't like what I'm going to a wedding next week. And I'm like, so that I feel like was learned along the way by looking in social media or looking at ideals out there. So when you're doing your work with somebody and they've got all this swirling in their head, how do you like in the most simplified way start the unravel process? Of course, long term, go see Dr. Kim. But what can they do? What can I do today to just say, new way? There's a sustainable way for me. There is a permanent way. Okay, cool. This woman's come on. I believe her. What do I do now?
Yes, great question. So the first thing that comes up for me as I hear your story, when you have this aha moment, when you reflect back and you realize, wow, this isn't just about fitting in my clothes. This dates back to when I'm 6 and I have this memory that you probably had never connected before. The first thing I always want to encourage is self-compassion, right? Because this isn't something that's new. This is something, I don't know how old you are, but you look beautiful, but this is something that looks like it's been going
45.
on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For 40 years.
You don't have to answer, Ushi. Public
Pretending, I would say
Yeah.
you're in your 30s. But really, this is something, if you take a look at that little girl who's 6, who all of a sudden had this urge, the first thing, like if what we want to do is externalize that child in ourselves and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea how long and how severe you've been suffering. And I'm only making it worse,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Because we are not having enough self-compassion for our struggle. We're just beating ourselves up for our behavior. And first things first is always start with self-compassion. Self-compassion can be just acknowledgement. It could be just observing and describing, wow, I see that part of me that's really still 6. When you're getting ready to go to your event, that's the 6-year-old that started. That's, oh my God, I need to exercise for 2 hours in order to look and feel good on stage.
Yeah.
And so that's that part of you still operating. The second thing is what does that girl really need at that moment? There's a reason why, for whatever reason, and you don't have to answer, but think about what was going on in her life. Somewhere, either she wanted to be like, I'm just speculating, she wanted to be like her mom, like maybe she sees her mom on the bike, right? Maybe she hears about exercise and dieting from a parental figure that's also very absorbed in it. Maybe you were out of control in an area in your life at school and it helped you feel powerful and strong. And while we may not be able to ask ourselves these questions because we don't know, I want you to start thinking about what was going on in my life that even started that, right? Because then if we can understand, that becomes our first red flag for what's going on now. So is it when I feel insecure, I want to go restrict and overexercise? Is it when I feel shame? Is it when I feel like, what is the trigger that prompts the desire?
I'm just going to go for 1 second because I just realized that it's all triggered by achievement for me.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's all. And then, of course, underlying the achievement is that's where my source of love is coming from.
So
is
if I
why,
achieve, then I'm lovable.
yes. And especially because now look where it's triggered is, oh, I'm headed to a talk and I want to be whatever I dream up in my head. Wait, to be effective at a
Because
talk.
then if I am,
Yeah.
the audience will love me more. They will
Yes.
admire me more. They will
Yes.
adore me more. And they then now attach body image to achievement, which then, if again, at the root is I am unlovable unless I perform. And this could be, again, I want to say this isn't your fault. This could be your culture too. That's so profound. I hear so many women of your culture that really speak to this. And my son is in a school that's all multicultural with academics and achievement. And that is how they are loved, right?
Yes.
You do well on your comprehensive exams. You do well on your presentations. We're going to celebrate you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like I just, for the benefit of anyone who's listening that had maybe that cultural upbringing, the sort of eclipsing part of it for me was that it wasn't like my mom and dad were the most loving, like they really were, but because they were a product of their own story and the same kind of messaging, it was the subtle ways they would like, it was the subtleties of it. Like my parents never said you're overweight. They never said anything like that, but maybe they felt it about themselves and I picked up on it. Yeah, I watched how they were serving. Like in our household when I was young, the women would serve the men and then the men would eat and enjoy, and then whatever was left the women got to eat. And I used to yeah, but not because they were like trying to be like I'm better than, it was like literally what they did. So
Right.
until somebody like me came along and was like, oh, wait a second. Wait, I want to sit
Mhm.
at the table and eat, right? And then even after that happened, it was feed the kids and not myself. So it was never about nourishment. It was always about obligation and duty and looking good in the eyes of everybody else. That was the first
Mhm.
established memory I have of food. It wasn't this thing of, come on over, Marta. Let's like, I made this thing for you. Let's talk together. Let's enjoy. Let's savor all these blessings in our life, which is where I've come to now. So it's so, I literally, even though I'm stalking you on social media, I never connected the dots until you told me that today. So amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
and
so
it's
glad that you were able to get something out of it, because I'd love to hear your why too, Marta, because once we get to that root or one of them, think of a tree, right? Each tree that grows has more than one root. And so if this was just one of them, you're one step closer to learning to love yourself without achievement, right?
Mhm.
Totally.
Yeah,
And
and I
what
think
about for you, Marta?
yeah, everybody I think has a story now that I think about it, but not everybody struggles as much. And that's one of my questions once I tell you my story and what happened for me. I also observed my sister through the entire life, and I was always jealous because she has no issues around food whatsoever. We grew up in the same household. I grew up always thinking I always have to be on a diet. She didn't. And my entire life is full of jealousy for her because I would give all my money, all my success, all my everything to be able to eat what she eats. And she doesn't care. She just does. But I think for me, I think it was the opposite of Ushi's story because I grew up in Poland and everybody's skinny back then, especially. Everybody was skinny. I was a heavy child growing up, which now in America, I think it's more common to see some heavier children. But back then, when I was growing up in the 80s, there were really no heavy children. It was me and another girl in school. So now imagine being two people in the whole school that are overweight and what pressure it puts on you. I didn't even know I was overweight until I think it was in maybe eighth grade. Some boys started making fun of me. My throat shuts up when I talk about it. See, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So
But an impact it made is that I was always a very cool girl, even though I was not like pretty or anything. And all of a sudden, boys started making fun of me. And I'm like, what? Why are you making fun? What is going? Like, my brain couldn't compute. And when it finally realized, I was like, wow, I'm the flawed one. I'm the bad, like all the shame. So very quickly, I did something about it because I'm a go-getter. I just learned that at whatever age, 13, that I went the whole summer, went on a diet, extreme diet, came back to school and I was the hottest girl in school all of a sudden. And the same boys that made fun of me all wanted to date me. So imagine what that does to your brain at that early age, because you can analyze me really quickly. What kind of reward did I get for being on a diet during that summertime and losing all that weight and being hot all of a sudden? So then I'm the hottest girl in school and everybody likes me. And from then on, the stigma just carries on through my entire life. Fat means people will make fun of you. Skinny means everybody wants to date you and you're popular. And then I came to America and like I always had that shame in me because in Poland, most of my friends didn't struggle with food. Like it was just not a thing. Maybe the food quality was different at that time. We didn't have as many pesticides, all this stuff, HMOs. Is that what? No, it's not HMO. What is it called?
I
GMOs.
think it's GMO,
GMOs. I'm like HMO.
right?
What am I talking about?
But
Is that what it
HMOs
is?
Because I'm in real estate.
That's okay.
But
All the
yes,
letters.
Yeah.
it's the letters. But I felt that my behavior got even further more rewarded when I came to America because everybody's here on a diet. They have diet cookies and sugar-free this. I'm like, yes, this is my country. This is amazing. Like in Poland, we don't have any of that.
Yeah.
And now it only reinforces the story in my head that you have to be skinny, number one. And number two, look, everybody else is on a diet. So I'm not the only one. So I think American culture very much it reinforces the struggle because it became a norm. Everybody is on a diet. Everybody's trying to be skinny. Nobody was trying to do that in Poland. So there you go. That's my story. And until I had the conversation with you maybe a few weeks ago, I thought that's always going to be the pattern for the rest of my life because that's just what I'm used to. I know only that. And when you said, no, it doesn't have to be, that's when my interest really got piqued. I'm like, I'm just thinking about the next diet. That's always what's on my mind. Which one is the next one? Which one is the more sustainable one? Which one is the healthier one? Which one is not going to drop me too quickly so I don't gain too fast? That's pretty much what my brain thinks all the time. And then Dr. Kim says, no. Or she even told me, Marta, you don't have to take these leftovers from the restaurant home. I'm like, no, you have to. That's the rule, Kim. That's the rule. You take leftovers home. She's, no, the food will be here tomorrow if you need it. I'm like, how do you know that? We don't
That's
know.
another one. Here tomorrow if you need it.
That was the most shocking sentence of my life. I'm like, are you sure those meatballs I can have tomorrow? She's, you can have them tomorrow. You can have them day after. You don't have to take them home. I'm like, wow, this is shocking to me.
It's your story in my brain is because that's like true of money. It's true of everything. If that's a scarcity, like if you're afraid it's going to be going, of course you're going to be like, okay, go. So good. Yeah. Go.
Analyze me now, please.
Yes, no, there's actually, it's more of I relate to you and I understand. It's not an analyzing. And I think it's something that so many people and hopefully listening to, it's more of, oh my God, that's me. There's nothing wrong with you. We don't need to fix you. We just need to change the way we relate to food. And I think what I told you that at the restaurant and that I'd like to reiterate is that, yes, we have this diet culture. And because we've been on these yo diets forever, we've developed, like what you were saying, a dieter's mentality. So I'm either on the diet or I'm off the diet. And I follow the rules of the diet, and hopefully they're not too restrictive or that I lose weight too fast, because when I go off the diet, I want it to sustain, but it usually doesn't last. So then I go back on the diet. And so what you were speaking to with the meatballs was, I'm going to eat it all now because I'm not on the diet. And so when I start my diet again, I won't eat them ever again. Like I'm going to start again tomorrow. I'm going to maybe have some tonight when Sophie goes to bed or my child goes to bed.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I'll start again tomorrow. I will not do, I will eat good. We have these kind of dieters mentality words, which are absolute, like all or nothing. I'm either on the diet or I'm off the diet. Either I ate perfectly today or I messed up and I completely
Shame comes in then. Yeah, because now you're in the middle of a diet and you still ate that meatball. Now shame.
Yes. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't do this. And the cycle continues. So what I had encouraged you to look at that moment is, we don't want all, right? We don't want to binge eat till we're stuffed in the face and then never eat it again. But we don't want nothing, because on those restrictive diets of those super low calories, or now with the GLP-1 medications, we're not even eating. So the goal in the psychology of weight loss, of lasting weight loss, is all about some. It's learning to have some and be okay with some, and having that mentality like, okay, I could have some again tomorrow. I could have some again the next day. I could even have some later if I really want it. But for right now, I'm going to have a portion size. I'm going to satisfy my physical hunger, not my psychological hunger. And I'm going to eat mindfully and truly savor and enjoy without guilt. Because if we allow those things to happen, we won't even want them later. We won't even, because we know we can. And so part of the process, Ushi, that you had mentioned was like, where do I start? Like, how do I get to the root? So it's going back and reflecting. Where did this all begin? Understanding the triggers, and then saying, okay, how is the dieter's mentality also playing out in my life today? Because that's only going to reinforce the shame, because we can't live perfectly on any diet forever. And if we live on those unrealistic, sustainable diets, we're even have massive health issues from malnutrition and loss of lean muscle mass and GI upset and pancreatitis and all of that. Or we're going to be starving and miserable, and then we're not enjoying our life. So the goal is truly to learn to have some, and that's what I love to help people with.
That's beautiful. I'm going to go put some on a Post-it.
Yes. Yes. That's the goal.
Yeah. But that's the goal this is what I love about what you're saying is, I'm having this like light bulb. That's everything. That's not just the food. It's if I can have some. And I can have some again, because then I'm free. And so now I'm not reacting to any notion, like how you were saying you were rebelling against I did the same thing. There's no notion of rebellion. I am at choice here, which means I am so fully empowered to say some. It's not restrictive. It's more empowering.
Yes.
And
And
can
it's
you give some
permission.
permission? And can you give some
Yeah.
tools for people that don't know life without a diet? Because like for a lot of us that are either on a diet or off the diet, it's either all in or all out. But what is normal? What is normal? So can I have a piece of chocolate as a normal, or maybe
Absolutely.
sometimes? Like, what
Everything.
is normal?
Yes, everything is normal. So normal eating truly is paying attention to your physical hunger cues and
Mhm.
eating at least 80% of the time because your body's telling you I need food and
I'm
nourishment.
hungry.
I'm
Mhm.
hungry,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But what happens is that because we're so restrictive and because we're relying on medication that takes away all these signals, we don't even know when we're physically hungry anymore.
Mm.
And part of the work then is to start to get curious and tune in to what are my physical signs for hunger?
Mhm.
What is it? Lightheadedness? Is it my tummy growling? Is it a headache? And then what you do is you eat for physical hunger 80% of the time. 20% of the time you can eat for psychological hunger. And psychological hunger isn't always negative. It could be celebration. It could be chocolate just because you feel like it. It could be because something
Mhm.
smells good, tastes good, looks good, sounds good. It doesn't have to be only in response to a negative emotion. And the first thing is to really tune into that physical hunger, get curious, get aware. And then
Mhm.
I want you to, if you say, you know what, I'm not physically hungry, I'm not in the mood for a healthy meal, I really want a piece of chocolate right now, that's okay too, as long as we're balancing it out with healthy food at some point. But then I want you to eat so slowly. I want you to eat 3 bites. After 3 bites, food loses its physiological properties. So the
Mhm.
reason why we crave complex
Wow.
carbohydrates, breads and chips and chocolates is typically because they release serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine in
Mm.
the brain, right? So we get that feel good feeling and we're like,
Mm.
this is so good, right? And you're like, ah, and it's almost like you had your fix. But just like a drug, it only lasts 20 minutes. And then after the 20
Mm.
minutes subsides, we're looking for food again. We're in the
Mm.
pantry. We're thinking about DoorDash. We're like, what drive through can I go through real quick on the way home from work or whatever it may be? And that's where the problem is
Yeah.
because we have to learn to become satisfied with some. Because when we've trained our brains to have all, nothing is awful. And some can be difficult until we've learned to tolerate the discomfort that may come after wanting more. But if you truly learn to savor, eat slow, and really enjoy the chocolate, I think
Mhm.
you will be able to stop and not need and want more. And then tell yourself, if I really want more later, I'll have another 3 bites. But I'm not going
Mhm.
to eat the whole sleeve of cookies. I'm not going to eat the whole vat of ice cream. I'm not going to eat the whole jar of whatever.
So
Mm.
you don't throw in the towel, because a lot of dieters has, if I had one piece of chocolate, might as well eat the meatballs, bread, and everything else because I'm already bad, right? I already
Exactly.
had a
That's
bad
the
food.
dieter's mentality.
Hmm.
So once I've blown it, I'm going all in.
I'm all in.
I'm
Yeah.
all in. And so either I'm
Yeah.
all in or I'm all out. And
Yeah.
that dieter's mentality is what sets people up for binging, for
Mm.
Mhm.
restricting, for shame.
Yeah, this is one thing I'm going to unhook based on what you just said. I also will do a thing of, oh, I'll have the chocolate, but then I'll walk a little extra. But my walk is sacred to me. My walk is where I get to be Ushi and I get to free my mind and it's mental health. So now I'm restricting myself from something I love or making it about something that's punishing myself because I ate chocolate. And I'm like, I'm going to break up with that right now in this moment.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Okay. So then I have another, maybe we're going to take a right for a second. My kids are 5 and 3 boys,
Hey.
and they started to use the word fat.
I don't
And
allow that word in my
Sad.
house at all.
yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't understand because I'm like, did they see it on a cartoon? Maybe at
School. It's
school.
at school. Yeah.
Yeah, but not in relation to body. I want a big fat piece of and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, that's coming into my head. And then I was like, did we watch Big Fat Greek? What? They're like, just,
Oh.
yeah. But then I was like, okay, so now I don't want to put any energy or emotion around this, but I wanted to ask them, like, what is this word fat that's in your, but then I was like, I don't want to have that conversation till I clean it up in my head because I don't want any of my whatever to influence them. Because I'm
Mhm.
like, you're five. And see, this is also why that experience that you shared earlier with us, or that you had me go into at 6, I'm feeling this. I look at my 5-year-old and there's no way I want any inch of that near him. I know that you don't work with children, but you work with young women. And so, what is the language around? What is the empowering language I can share with my children around this language, whether it's addressed if they're like talking to themselves or thinking that about themselves or they're thinking about others? Do you have some tips and guidance on that for how we can reinforce the sum culture?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a great question. And just to clarify, so I usually work with 8 and above. So I
8.
definitely
Okay.
8 and
Awesome.
above.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's just some things that kind of happen cognitively at that point where it's easy
Yes.
to easier to talk and less play. But yes, and just to reiterate to your point, I have a 10, almost 11-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. And so it's terrifying what's going on with our children and culture and body image and even the word fat.
Hmm.
And I'm very sensitive to it as well because of my own experiences and everything I hear in my office and everything that traumatizes people when you don't even know they're being traumatized.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
yes, you want to protect your kids, and yet they live in a culture that they have access to everyone and everything on YouTube Kids in school, and we can only protect so much. So the question is then is how then do I have this conversation with them without making it an issue? And how do we have these conversations openly? And so with them right now, I agree that you did do the right thing in terms of not bringing attention to it. And I probably wouldn't until it starts to become applied to a body or food or judgment. Like right now, they're just saying, oh, I need a big fat piece of cake, right?
Right.
Like my
That's
guess,
exactly what they said.
yes, Marta, is you're right. Somebody said it at school, or somebody said it in an activity, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but when it starts to shift to, I'll give you a story really briefly. When I had never, we don't say fat in the house, we don't have fat talk, we talk about bodies, and we emphasize being healthy. When when my daughter was little and she was watching me getting dressed and it was still appropriate for her to see me getting dressed, she'd be like, Mommy, why does your butt jiggle when you walk? Or like,
Oh,
why
my
are
daughter
there
always says, I love mommy, how fat you are. I love the fat on you. I'm like, oh.
Yes. And so all I say in those moments, whether it's your daughter, whether it's your son, all you say is, you know what? All I care about is being healthy. All I want to do. I'm glad I have a healthy butt. That's what I used to say. And then there was one time where we went to a big barbecue with a bunch of friends, and my son, who has never heard anybody call anybody fat before, went to reach and grab a snack off of somebody else's plate. Still rude, don't do it without asking. But the girl goes, you don't need that. You're fat.
Wow.
And this
Wow.
literally, I want to
Oh
say he
my
was 7 and my daughter
goodness.
was 5. And the
Oh,
hysteria. And so this
Wow.
day he's 13, he'll never forget it. But we had to talk about it. And then I
mm,
had to obviously had to talk to the mom, who's the parent of the child. And it turns out that
Mhm.
she struggles with her weight. And the husband was saying that to
yes.
her. So then the
Oh,
Oh
child
my God.
reiterates it to the friends. And then now my son has this or had this complex. Oh my God, I can't eat Cheez-Its or whatever because I'm fat. It drives me bananas. You can see the energy in it.
yeah.
It's just upsetting. So in that instance, we talk about it. We
Yeah.
talk about body. We talk about a healthy body, that bodies comes in all different shapes and sizes, and that the goal is a healthy body and healthy foods with sometimes unhealthy choices, or not even good versus bad. It's healthy versus maybe not as healthy, or a sometimes treat. Like I do not restrict candy, junk food at all in my house because I grew up in that
Uh,
environment. And so I do not want that for my kids because they have my personality and I know they will be binging somewhere else if I don't allow it. And so I allow it, but then I've taught them how to have some. We get a bowl and I've educated them about portion sizes. I use with kids, this is like the depiction that I use. So this is like how many carbohydrates you need on your plate for your belly. This is how much protein you need. And then you can have as much veggies as you want, but fat's usually like right here on your thumb. So when they look at their plate, they're like, okay, this much carbohydrates for French fries or pasta or whatever it is, this much protein, and then this much fat. And then fruits and veggies are typically as much as you can. So I like to educate. I like to educate about portion size. Like we can eat anything. And that's why I also love to buy those prepackaged snacks so that what one serving size is, because this way, like my daughter would love to sit on our couch and just eat mindlessly watching whatever YouTuber she's obsessed with now.
100%. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I say, you can have those snacks, but I need it in a bowl. I want it in a plate. And so this way, like how much of a serving size is that? Like 18 of this equals one size. So I want you to enjoy it. I want you to eat it slow. And I want you to really be mindful so that you don't have to go back for the entire bag in order to be satisfied.
And you think that allowing them to eat sugar, because that the reason I don't really allow very much sugar is because I was allowed, my grandma allowed me anything because out of love, right? And I was obese. So I'm trying to protect my daughter from having issues later, being addicted to sugar like I was. So I'm like, I do separate. I said, okay, you can have it on the weekend or whatever. But you're saying I'm creating that mentality that it's a forbidden fruit, not fruit, forbidden sugar. And and she is going to have issues around it because if I do allow, she's going to be wanting it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, all the time. And that's all she wants. So I allow it in, let's say we're on the plane and I need you to be good and act normal. I'm buying you that sugar. If there's some, so it's always as a reward for me. And
So
it's
then you
probably
have to
not
pay
good.
attention, right? So if you're teaching her that
Yeah.
sugar equals reward, and again, not a judgment, tons of parents do this.
Yeah.
We get them ice cream if they do well on a test or they celebrate
Mm.
an activity like baseball. Let's go out for ice cream, right? The goal is to normalize it as much as possible and not make it an issue and not be a reward, but just something that they can have some of the time. Like you were saying, and you don't have to answer this, but I'm going to challenge you and say, are you sure she would want it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Or are you just projecting that because maybe we did, right? Or
I would
does
say because when we're on vacation, I'm much more loose with food. I don't want to argue. I just want to enjoy my life, which food arguments is pretty much majority of my day with her. But because I'm so health conscious, because of my past, I have my whole library of books about food from every country in the world. I've read every book. I know nutrition. I know everything. So I'm very hyper aware of not only bad for your teeth, but this and that, right? So I do allow it on a weekend sometimes, and then she will go for it. Nobody's business. She just wants to live in a pantry, pretty much. So I'm like, I don't know where it is okay to say, okay, let's just do it. Let's see how quickly you get bored with food and you'll be asking for normal food. Is that the approach? Or as
so
parents, is our
yeah,
goal to
so I think
restrict
it's somewhere in
some?
between. So where you're going, just because it's probably very ingrained and part of your personality, is very all or nothing. So either I restrict it and I only give it to you on the weekends or on vacation. So of course she's going to binge on Saturday and Sunday because she's like, "Ah, I have 2 days of like pantry."
Yeah.
Or mommy's being lackadaisical on vacation, so I'm just going to go for it. So I don't know if that's an actual representation or if it's somebody that only knows they can get it then, and then they're restricted from Monday through Friday. So the experiment would be is never to say, okay, you could have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're gonna have free will. Because if someone said that to me after 20 something years, if not longer, of my own health and wellness, I probably would still have a party and be like,
Yeah.
total free for all.
Yes.
But the truth is that if you just gave her some, like maybe once after dinner or a little like gummies with her lunch, my guess is that she's not going to want to binge on a Saturday or Sunday or completely go to town like an addict on a vacation. And I think what you're teaching her is that, you know what, this is part of her life, right? Because I promise you that once she starts going to birthday parties when you're not there, and once she starts going to sleepover parties, she is going to be eating those cupcakes and candy balls like it's nobody's business because mommy's not here to police. So what
That's why homeschooling is the best way to go. And just never let them out of the closet.
You're at home. You're at home when she homeschools. So
and
it's still there.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's like the battle against the sugar is so real. Like I don't know if there's a way to stop it. Might as well not create eating habits that are going to be unhealthy for her in the future. I wish there was
Thank
a
you.
world
I
with no
understand
sugar,
your
but there
struggle.
isn't.
And I think any mother listening or any father that's listening goes through the same struggle, like how much sugar is enough. And I'm not at all saying any amounts all the time. I'm just saying let's find a balance where it's not this all or nothing or restrictive or tied to reward, where they're building these connections and their conditions to being reinforced later in life.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think we're already at time and it's been an hour and it
And we
goes so
want more.
fast. Yeah.
I know, I'm so ready to
even
keep
though-
going.
yeah, please come back. But what I was thinking, and even now, like I want you to be the some culture lady because
I
I
love
think
that.
I do. I really think so much of what you said has moved me today, and I'm very grateful that you could come. And of course, Marta is bringing all these great women that just are so enlightening on a topic that seems very hard for people. And so you're the some culture is I'm literally like some. It's
It's
so
okay.
great.
Yeah.
So definitely come back. And in these last few moments that we have, can you tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to go deeper with you and just a little bit about your program and what they can expect so that we can make sure if anyone was listening who wants to go further knows how to do it?
Oh, absolutely. So the first
Yeah.
thing is I have a website. It's www.drkimfeinstein.com.
Spell your
DRKIM.
last name.
I know F as in Frank, EINSTEIN.com. And on my website, I even have freebies. So feel free to browse the website. There's some freebies on how to deal with the food pushers when people are pushing food on you and you want to say no. I even have a free holiday guide, how to deal with holidays. I'm going to be publishing more on how to prevent emotional eating. So I love to give away really valuable content for people who are struggling. And then in June, I will be launching my course. I've created an online course about the psychology of permanent lasting weight loss. And it really dives deep into what it is we've talked about today. It's an 8-module course, 40 lessons, really step-by-step actionable strategies on how to find your why and how to heal it so that you can prevent the yo-yo weight gain, make peace with yourself, your body, and actually enjoy your life without thinking about food any longer.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. And for the listeners who are listening, so it's June 2024. And is it self-paced so they'll be able to take it, or is there an enrollment period? Like,
No,
will it for
actually,
the course? Yeah.
there'll be 3 tiers. So you can do it at
Okay.
a self-paced one, so you don't have to have a specific enrollment time. There'll be an option to do the course with a Facebook community where I'll be hosting Facebook Lives twice a month. So this way we could dive deeper and question and answers. And then there's an option to work with me individually with the
Awesome.
course.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Please come back. I think when you launch your
absolutely.
course, come back because I'd love to hear how it's going for everyone. And I want to tell you how the some culture is making a difference in my world and Marta's
Thank you.
world. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm just so grateful for you in personal life and in your expertise. I love you so much, Dr.
Oh, I love
Kim.
you
But
too.
to me, you're just my Kim.
Yes.
And I just love listening to you, and we need to have you back. And I would love for you to also give your Instagram handle or however people can find you on social media. Do you have Instagram
Thank
or
you.
Facebook? What do you?
Yes, so it's my Instagram is at Dr. Kim Feinstein. And then my Facebook, I think, is just Kim Feinstein or Kim Schneider Feinstein. I think it's just one from 2008 that I've converted over to a digital profile. But my Instagram is at Dr. Kim Feinstein.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you so much. We love you. I love you extra
I love you
special.
too.
Yes,
Thank you
we'll
for
have you
having me.
back.
I've enjoyed this immensely.
Thank you. And thank you,
Thank you so
listeners,
much.
for showing up. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with your friends or family members who may also benefit from it. And please don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Instagram at Ashes to Love. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.